everything went wrong.
All right. Here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Do you like my radio show voice? It's so good, isn't it?
What happened right before the radio show voice is what I'm laughing about.
You're the next contestant on.
All right.
Anyways, all right. Welcome to another episode of Brews and Tunes. It's going to be an awesome day, evening tonight. I'm really excited. I am your host, Corey Black. I play saxophone. I teach music. I do all sorts of things. It's a lot of fun. Yes, wash your hands of it. Get it off of you now. Great. Tonight, I am joined by two great friends of mine. First, we are joined by our Jay and May residency, Jay Miglia, with us this evening.
Good
Straight
evening.
from his, is that your living room, dining room?
This is a living room, yes.
You have moved from what was last week? Where were we last week?
I rotated 90 degrees.
Oh, I see. So like really you could make
I got
your
a
house
window here. I like the window.
Well,
so I can get out. If I need to leave quickly, I can get right out.
It's an escape hatch. I like it. And we're also joined by Zach Compston, great music educator, great director of music education over at Jazz Arts Group. We are happy to have him. How you doing, Zach?
I'm doing great. It's so good to be here.
Well, it is amazing for you to be here. We were talking a little bit before the show. What you do with Jazz Arts and your live stream videos were the inspiration for me to get into doing this myself. And so on behalf of myself and everybody else on the entire internet that is watching this right now, which is so many people, I want to thank you for what you guys are doing. It's awesome.
Well, I appreciate that. It's been fun to try to figure out how to keep the jazz audiences engaged during the quarantines, as they were.
The quarantines. I like it. Not to be confused with Clementines.
And not my darling either.
Thank you. There it is. I was waiting. That's great.
But they are dreadful sorry.
Nice.
Wow. Here we are. This is
Let's
great.
Let's stretch that premise.
Yeah.
Well, guys, as you know, this is Brews and Tunes, and Brews and Tunes wouldn't be complete without the fantastic first segment of our show, which is all about craft beer. And tonight, I am drinking and representing our Zaftig Fantastic Nuts for You, which is amazing. I love it. Peanut butter chocolate stout. I'm looking for the camera. There it is. There we go. There it is. Chocolate peanut butter stout. It's amazing. Zaftig does stouts like nobody does stouts. You need to get there and get some of that if you have not. If you're a porter or stout fan, you're missing out if you've never had one. So that's what I'm drinking tonight. Jay, what are you drinking tonight?
I've got the Juicy Lucy supply down the street. So
what you're saying is you haven't finished the entire 6-pack yet?
This is a new one. This is a new one.
It's not the same one as
before,
this
morning? Huh? Is that what you're trying to say?
That's right.
This is the one I drank this morning.
That's right. Hey, just so everybody is aware right now, this is good. Number one rule in live streaming when you're doing a live stream show is to make sure you hit the start button. To hit start streaming. So everybody who's on the internet right now watching us, you missed our entire first segment, but I'm so happy you're with us now. That's the best part. We are here tonight with the great Jay Miglia and Zach Compston.
Sounds even better the second time.
Isn't it great? It's my favorite. It's my all-time favorite. Anywho, those of you who are listening on the podcast, just tune out for the next 20 seconds. Those of you who are listening on our live stream, again, I'm going to introduce Zach Compston, head of music education from Jazz Arts Group. Incredible, awesome person. Love him. Zach, thanks for being here again.
It's my pleasure to be here, even yet the second time around.
I love it. This is why I love this show. I can just mess things up all around. That's great. Good. And thanks to our Jay and May residency, Jay Miglia, for joining us. Jay, how you doing tonight?
Thank you, Corey. I'm great. Glad to still be here.
I'm glad you're still here, too, and you didn't take off. That's
Might I be able to say now is the month of Jaying?
That's right. Now is the month of Jaying. Jay Miglia, or as my good friend Lane Champa puts it, #Meglia, because it is #Meglia Mania. There you go.
Gosh.
Meglia. Just switching it up.
Russell Maglia.
That's what we try. It's hard. Anywho, folks, tonight we're excited to be drinking. We've covered this already, but I'll cover it again. I'm drinking Nuts for You by Zaftig, sponsored by Zaftig. How many times can I say Zaftig on this show about Zaftig and jazz? Probably like 15. Jay is sporting yet another beautiful Juicy Lucy with us.
Lucy.
Not the
Also
snifter.
Zaftig.
Did you clean the snifter since last week, or is it still sitting on the dishwasher?
Oh, I forgot it.
See, I'm just saying.
I got no class.
Anyways,
Low class.
anyways,
I'm a wee heavy guy.
you're a wee heavy guy.
Oh, yeah.
I like the Scotch ale.
That might be my next attempt there. I'm getting
I would check
excited
it
about
out. It's a
4-pack.
Yeah, it's. I actually for my bachelor party
that. Yes.
went
Please
to
go
a-
into details here, Zach.
I went
on the
to I
interwebs.
went to a brewery that does like group self brewing sessions, and we did I did a Scotch ale, and ever since then, man, I've been hooked. So when I played the session with you back in the winter, and with you, Jay, I got the wee heavy and was like, oh yeah, this is good.
Yeah. Well, they do beers and they do beers heavy. So as the name says it, you better watch out if you're going there for a night of drinking. All right, folks, we are excited about tonight's show because tonight's show is all about education and jazz and how jazz kind of fits into education. And also, how the heck are we going to educate in times like what we're living in right now? Because it definitely looks like it's not going anywhere for a little bit. So I am excited about this show. This is obviously something that I'm very heavy on. I love music education. Obviously, I've dedicated my career towards it. And I'm beyond excited to kind of dive into it with you guys. So as we're talking about education, I am beyond excited and interested in the idea of what the heck was your first kind of approach to jazz education and where did it come from? And Zach, I kind of want to start with you because I think you have a unique story. So, what was your first kind of approach to jazz education? Was it in middle school? Was it in high school? Was it from a teacher? Was it from when you were like 3? I'm curious.
Well, I was really fortunate that my dad was my band director. And so my folks met in the Air Force. They were stationed at Wright-Patterson, spent a few years in the Air Force. They were stationed in Germany for a while, and that's where my brother and I were born. And then me being the second youngster to come along, they decided to get out of the service and move back to Eastern Ohio, where my dad grew up, really close to Wheeling, West Virginia, on the Ohio border there. And he became the band director at the high school or the school district that I would eventually attend. So, at an early age, I was kind of like matching pitch pretty easily and playing tunes on the piano. And I had like a youthful aptitude for music. But then he would have the marching band out on the field. And I'd play the drum set in the band room in the summers. He'd let me play. And I can remember I couldn't reach the bass drum pedal, so I'd play the floor tom as the bass drum. And I'm left-handed, so at the time I didn't know any better. My left hand would play the hi-hat, so I'd be like, and I'd just do it all with my hands. And then eventually, my dad had a really excellent jazz band in the mid '90s. Especially for that area, which is a traditionally somewhat arts deprived area, and he had a jazz band that would compete and go to like the OSU Jazz Festival even in those days.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And, I just remember the combination of him teaching his big band, but then he would play with regional sort of territory bands in that area, and so going with him to rehearsals, and I used to just get like this nervousness watching a jazz band rehearse.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I didn't really know what was going on, but I just was like so into the process. And I think for me, by the time I got to start teaching jazz, it sort of came through that lens of having listened to it, observed my dad teaching it. So I don't know. I don't think I ever really, I didn't study music education in school. I just sort of came up with musical family. I had Jay as my first combo director at Capitol, which was a fun experience. Jay, I don't know if you even remember that group we had in that little office in the percussion basement.
I do. Did Cole play vibes in that one? That was another year, maybe.
I think that was another year.
We
had Rachel Sepulveda on piano.
Rachel Sepulveda.
Yep, and Charlie Scott was on bass.
Playing bass.
And Tyler, the guitar player.
Yeah, my God.
Tyler Evans. Yeah.
Yeah, and all those guys played.
Yep.
I think I remember going to all their recitals. They were all like
Yeah.
All you guys just were amazing when you left Cap.
Right.
So,
Well, I don't know. I mean, I could speaking for them, but but you know, the other aspect about teaching in general, Corey, is that when I was seventh grade, my dad threw a snare drum on me in marching band in sixth grade, which was because we had small townville.
Yeah,
like
you had to.
he needed another drummer, you know.
Right.
But then by seventh grade, he let me start writing like some drumline music. And then by the time I was in high school, I was spending my study halls going back to the middle school to teach the percussion kids. So it was kind of like already happening, you know, before I had really given it any kind of deep thought. So when I was coming up at Capitol, not only did I have great jazz education early on with Jay and all the ensembles at Capitol, but a couple things there, you know, studying with Lou Fisher, who just retired after 26 years, I think. He was a guy that always saw more in yourself than even you could see, and he would force it out of you, literally. And you know, at the time you're like overwhelmed by this kind of intimidating guy, and you know, you're mumbling under your breath, how can this guy be so mean to me? But in all honesty, you know, the combination of that and then Bob Breithaupt being somebody that always was kind of keeping you thinking about where you were going with your study and where your career and where things could lead. I think that sort of combination effect at Capitol lent really well to me wanting to keep teaching and using the skills that I kind of didn't even know I had until I got there. So I don't know, it was just the right combination of people kind of nudged me into something that I didn't even give a lot of like concrete, okay, I'm going to study jazz education.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm looking a little distracted. I got to fix my audio settings, so I'm working back and forth. As we all know, this is the best part about the show is it's spontaneous. It's live, and everything goes wrong at the right times. And I can't afford to hire a producer, so I am both the producer and the person who's speaking. Zach, I really love your story about, you know, your growing up in such a musical household. It was inevitable that you were going to be a musician of some sort. And I'm just, in my head, I'm picturing you in sixth grade on a field with a snare drum, and I want to picture
it was heavy, man. I've still got back problems from that, you know.
Yeah. Well,
this is like a field drum.
Yeah.
It was like on the carrier with the big, and it
Ooh.
wasn't the new sort of like free floating heads and lighter ones. It was a big, heavy drum. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, so, you know, Zach, you mentioned there wasn't necessarily like a moment when you started in a jazz band, but like, was it high school kind of when you started focusing towards that, or was it really truly like end of high school into college when you were at Capitol and all that?
I was playing in the jazz band, but I was playing saxophone sometimes. So like my band instrument was saxophone. And so in,
you know, I'm gonna stop you for a second, because the way you just said that is something I want to talk about later, which is my instrument for concert band was the saxophone, right? Like drums, not an instrument. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
You know,
this is a flashback to last week. I'm just echoing what Jay said last week. All right, that's all I'm saying.
But you know, the pool of hosts that are going to start coming on if you keep this up really fast.
I love it. No, you were saying, sorry.
That's okay.
Saxophone was in concert band and.
Yeah, so I played saxophone as my like band instrument in fifth grade on, and so that was something my dad would be like, I don't have an alto player this year. You're going to play in the jazz band. Somebody else can keep some ride cymbal time, you know. And so I didn't play consistently in jazz band in high school. But my first private teacher was a percussion teacher, and it was this incredible gentleman that, you know, Jay. I don't know if you feel this way looking back on your first teacher in terms of like, holy crap, like where would I be without some of those earliest. But my teacher was Rick Parsons, who's the drummer with the River City Brass Band in Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh is closer to where I grew up than Columbus. And he showed me, you know, everything about coordination at the drum set, all this sort of like rudimental snare drum solos, and the stick control book, which I still have. It has the date on it from 2004 when I was, you know, a junior in high school. You know, he sort of showed me about going down a path of studying the drum set, which of course then you're going down the path of studying jazz. So then when I got to Capitol and I heard the big band and I heard this incredible drummer, Chris Guthrie, in the Capitol big band, I was like, I gotta be in that band at some point. So so that was really when playing jazz. I didn't really know what playing jazz meant until I got to Capitol.
Man, that is awesome, because I share a similar story with you, because I was in jazz band and whatnot, but I wasn't focused at all on what jazz is or jazz education until I got into college, and then I started really wanting to learn about it. But I think it's amazing, because I think of you as a fantastic musician, a great jazz musician in Columbus, and I think it just goes to show that, like, it doesn't matter when it hits you, it just matters the intensity that it hits you. And I'm glad that we can share that kind of a connection. That's really cool. Jay, I'm curious, when was your first approach to jazz? When were you allowed to dip your feet into the water of jazz?
Water.
For me, there was a student teacher. I think I was in 8th grade, and there was a student teacher that came to my middle school, and I can remember his last name was Barkowiak.
Wow, that sounds.
His first name was Mister.
That's what I tell my kids every day.
But he was the he started a jazz ensemble at the middle school, and that was my first experience of doing anything other than, legitimate, like, regular study, classical study,
It's interesting to me. So was your middle school band experience with your middle school band teacher, were they somebody who talked about jazz at all, or was it just a, you don't talk about this, it's not a real thing kind of approach?
My first, the guy, there were 2 of them in my middle school. There were 2 directors in my middle school, and one of them was strictly a classical trumpet player, very, very good classical trumpet player. And the teacher that I had before him was a saxophone player named Sid Blair. This is in the Detroit area, and Sid Blair used to play sessions and play gigs all the time. He was a teacher by day, and the other guy was Ron Magnuson. He was he would play gigs also, but he was a classical concert band trumpet player, very good one too. So
right. I'm just
so
interested.
he let the student teacher start up a jazz band. So
that's awesome. That's awesome that someone. It sounds cliche, but it's awesome that someone cared enough to start that type of art form in your school. I think all too often jazz still gets tossed to the side, even in the world that we live in today in music education, that there are jazz bands and things like that. But there aren't, there's not as much of a focus as there are on concert band. We're going to take a short break. I'm going to try to fix our audio for those who are listening on our live stream. I'm going to do one quick thing and see if it fixes it. If not, we're going to go with what we got, and we'll send you an awesome gift card. No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to send you a gift card. I'm sorry. I don't have that capability, but we are going to send you a link to our podcast. So we'll be back in about 2 minutes. We're going to give it one quick go and see what happens here. We'll be right back.
All right. This is great. 9 minutes. I love it. We'll cancel. Anywho, guys, thanks for being here. Thanks for doing this. We're talking about education. We're talking about jazz ensembles. We're talking to 2 of my favorite friends who are stuck in their houses and going insane just like me. Jay, we last left off, before all the crazy audio problem, we last left off talking about your middle school experience, where you had previously been, trained as a classical musician, and it was a student teacher who had talked you into looking into the jazz thing. And I'm curious, do you remember your first gig from the jazz scene as a kid?
Not school?
Yeah, just something on the side, outside of school.
I do, as a matter of fact.
Oh no, this sounds like this is about to be a really good story. I'm excited.
The first one was either I think I was playing. I remember my parents had to drive me to it. I was playing. I was like the horn section behind an all-adult choir.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And they were doing. I remember they did "Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog."
Oh, that's awesome.
So they were doing kind of. They were just doing songs like that, and I was 14 or whatever, trying to sound like I knew that song. I just got to solo a lot.
Good.
I had to stand there and play with a church kind of piano player, just playing every chord or all the notes in both hands all the time. stuff like that. So I'm sure.
Did you just run the blues scale like no?
I was
no,
just gonna ask.
da 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 da.
Yeah, the one I knew.
Zach, stop telling the internet my secrets. All right, you keep telling them, then I'm gonna have to learn more than just a blues scale someday.
You guys have seen that YouTube video with the young trumpeter playing Christmas carols with only the blues scale.
Yep.
So like he does "Joy to the World." Da, 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 da.
I'm getting inspired for an album now. Is what you're telling me. That's what I'm hearing.
It's about a 3-minute YouTube video at best.
Man, that's crazy.
So that was either the first gig or a McDonald's. I played at a McDonald's when I was.
You played at a McDonald's.
Yeah, I was at a McDonald's with some friends. Yeah.
Wow.
Opening for the Hamburglar.
Oh, there it is. Man, you only get one, Zach, and you just got it.
You had a tight 20-minute set.
All right. Well, Jay, I love it because what you're saying is in your first gig, you had limited jazz knowledge. Is what you're saying. And you walk in and you're ready to play and you know, confidence wise, how were you feeling? Were you feeling like I got this, or were you like I don't know what I'm doing? It's been so long, you can't tell me.
You know, I there were a couple of rehearsals. I'm sure there were. I seem to remember a couple of rehearsals, and I remember being nervous there because I was the youngest person in the room. So,
right.
If you could go
But I
back,
didn't
Jay,
get
to
fired.
go back to that, like what vocabulary was even? I joked about the blues scale, but like, what vocabulary did you have? I mean, like, what reference points do you think you were thinking of at that time?
This would go back to like you were mentioning, Zach, your early teacher.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, where would I be without that person? I'm sure I was relying on everything that he showed me. He was my one and only teacher up to that point. And Dennis Richards, my private lesson teacher, and I'm sure he gave me a really good foundation in major scales and things like that. So, and arpeggios, things like that, just real fundamental kind of saxophonery. So I'm sure I was relying on that stuff.
Yeah.
I remember taking a lot of notes. You're making me think about this, Corey. I remember I took a lot of notes. So once I would figure things out in rehearsal, I kept notes and stuff like that. So I at least had enough music literacy where I could like hear it and make it work on my instrument because there was no music for me. I just kind of had to hear it and recreate it.
Yeah, but you know what? I think that it's almost more important that when you're at a young age, and maybe this is just the middle school band director and me talking, but when you're at a young age, it's necessary that if you're going to dive into the art form of jazz, you need to start by audiation, right? You need to start by listening and doing rote playing rather than here's this music and here's the complex way that you play around this and whatnot. Zach, I'm curious now because as we're getting kind of into that topic, I know that you guys over at Jazz Arts Group do such a great job with our young kids, not just our old high school kids, but our young kids. And in that program, I think you guys do a really great job of explaining to kids, you know, obviously here's what a blues scale is, but you do a lot of playing for them and things like that. When you were young in middle school or high school and you started maybe exploring, even as a set player, even as a drum set player, would you kind of talk about, was it more of reading the music or was it absolutely listening from the start?
Yeah, for me, it was listening. As far as anything jazz related, it was listening.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of, in the reverse of what students do, but still as two parts, like I was an ear guy that learned how to read, you know, but and that's where having parents that were conscientious and knew what was up, they put the reading thing in front of me quick. They're like, okay, I see you with your ears, like, got to be able to read, you know. So, but I think the first thing that I went to and still probably lean on is playing by ear. And I think it's sort of tricky. You talked about the youth jazz program, and I appreciate that compliment. I think what we found is that you know, people go a long time without really engaging their auditory, their aural selves in their music, you know, especially in the age of you know, this may be unfavorable, competition music things, where the objective is to really read great and then really apply this technical mastery, which all of that has immense utility.
Correct.
You go a long way thinking you're successful, having not plugged in your internal oral voice to the music you're playing, you know? And so I was fortunate that I had a singer for a mom. We'd be in the car and the Temptations would come on.
Yeah.
We'd sing the melody. It was just my imagination. And then she'd sing the third to my brother. She'd sing the fifth to me. And then we'd split off and it would happen, you know? And it was the
That's
kind of
awesome.
thing. And now, but now as a teacher, as an educator, I find myself going back and wanting to like wire students in reverse, you know, to short circuit their brain from being literal to more auditory or oral in that way. Because I think it's so important, not just because of, you know, that's how you get gigs or that's how you make it in the biz, but that's how you love music, is if you have that internal voice despite the technical, you know, it's in there regardless of your instrument, you know. And I think a lot of students and a lot of educators have gone through their training having not plugged into that. And you know, in hindsight, you know, we used to sort of poke fun at the choral singers at the institution that I attended. You know, the singers, you know, but man,
every college, everywhere. Don't worry, we make fun of singers all the time.
Look at 40 singers up there, just singing their heart out and moving in that sort of, you know, that's a dramatic way to depict it, but it's that connection to the core of it that I think, to your point about teaching now and how I grew up, it's like, that's what you want to be in there all the time.
Right. Well, okay, so I don't want to take another mini break, but here we are, and our sponsor Zoom has decided to crap out on us, so we are going to take a very short break and be right back. And I want to hit more when we get back on that, Zach, because I think that is a really, really colossal statement that is important and needs to be recognized. So we'll be right back in just a second. All right, so as we took a short break, right beforehand, as we were talking, Zach, you were talking about kind of rewiring students to take them from it's so important to read the music to, okay, but we need to talk about how the importance of listening is a thing. Jay, I want to transition slightly to you, not to call you out on your age, but when you were learning this type of music and you were learning jazz standards and whatnot, how did you listen? How did you practice? How did you use what you had at your disposal? What was the thing that you used?
I was kind of lucky, because I always was engaging my ears, and I agree with both you guys that the audiation is such an important aspect when you're talking about any kind of music that has improvisation in it. Particularly, there's got to have like some sort of connection that's beyond visual, you know, because the soul and everything that comes, like you can't look at a note and get this, and the soul of it, you know, it doesn't register with you. The note registers maybe, but not like the sound and the feeling and all this semantic kind of stuff that you want to pack into it. It's not just an A. It's a lot of things, right? It's an A plus all this other stuff.
Right.
And you only get that through your ears, you know.
Well, and
so
as
I was
teacher,
a kid, I always practiced was learning stuff by ear.
Right,
always.
And as a teacher,
automatically,
especially in middle school, you're talking about it's more than an A. I have a tough time getting kids to realize that there's a crescendo under a note, right? It's not just dynamics. It's not just your approach to that note. It's everything that you can't see on the music that I think is important.
But you know what? To be fair to the crescendo, when a kid can hear the purpose of a crescendo, they'll play it. If they're trying to just see a crescendo as a you know, this happening,
right?
There's an extra, and Jay, you might probably know the science of this more than I do, but there's that visual brain has to go through more hurdles to turn it into an oral correlation, you know, or a musical correlation. You know, that's my feeling. You know, the case in point for that is like when I go into some of these schools, and I'm sure yours is one of them too. The music that they love, you're going to have an easier time getting them to commit to little tweaks, dynamics, and articulation. Right. Because they've plugged it in. They've plugged it into what Jay said, the soul of their musical self. And so you're going to be able to mold them. But if you're playing some, you know, old school concert band rep.
I like how you chose not to name any of those. And
you know, I love that music too, but
Oh,
something where they have to look at it and you have to shape the note.
Right.
It's like, well, I'm having a hard time relating to the music, let alone figuring out how to add more levels of nuance. And oh, by the way, I'm in 6th grade. It's like, so I think it's important. Like, I think what Jay said about the soul of the music being part of what you do, I can't agree with that more.
Right. Well,
I remember. Sorry, Corey.
No, go ahead.
I can remember, like, when I was first starting out on the saxophone. That was when there was a show on TV called the Lou Grant Show, and it was like it was a spin-off of the Mary Tyler Moore Show. That it was like the spin-off was like 20 years later or something like that, and they resurrected this character Lou Grant, who was a newspaper editor.
Yeah.
In this new show, but it had this awesome theme song, and it was an alto saxophone player, and it was just killing. And I used to play along with that all the time. I figured it out. It's totally like, Tommy Newsom Hollywood TV show, whatever. Right. But there were all kinds of themes like that on TV when I was a kid. So I'd sit in front of the TV, I'd practice my lesson stuff. And then every theme that came on, every television, every commercial, I'd learn how to play the music for everything. So I was always playing by ear. Yeah. And my practice sessions would be, 3 hours long, because I was working on my lesson stuff, and then I'd watch TV, and then
you get lost. Yeah.
The themes, and it was so fun. Practicing for me was just a game all the time. It was always fun. My friends would come over, and I wouldn't come out and stuff like that, because I'm back. So
sorry, man.
I was a geek. Yeah, I nerded out with the saxophone a lot, and I was always engaging my ears, and thank goodness I did. Mm-hmm. Nobody ever had to convince me to use my ears.
Right. So. Right. I think what's really cool is that everything we're talking about in terms of ideation and how essential it is to not just jazz, but all sorts of music. Because Zach, I like your point about the crescendo. If you can hear it and you understand why it's there, you're going to want to play it more than just reading it. I think that's huge. Mm-hmm. But I think it's awesome that we live in such a world right now that is all at your fingertips, and to be able to listen and hear and play is incredible. And I grew up in a generation where that was just kind of starting. It was kind of just on the internet. Like, YouTube was a thing, but it wasn't really filled with everything that people can use now. And I don't know, maybe both of you can kind of speak to, because I know that I'm the youngin', like really young here. I get it. But maybe you guys can speak to, when you're growing up and you were playing music and whatnot, were you able to use tools like that, like a practice tool? I don't know. Zach, were you using the internet to help you practice? Was it CDs? Was it MP3s? What was it?
Man, Corey. First of all, I didn't have high speed internet until I was leaving high school going on to college. And
right.
So we had dial up, and that was even when we got internet, which was, I was like maybe middle school,
And so for the young kids who have no idea what that is, it's the little beepy sound that makes it sound like you're.
So you used to have to plug, you used to have to go in through a hard landline phone and dial the company, which was a physical brick and mortar location that you call that would get you online,
Yep.
And so no, I didn't use the internet for music, but what I used, and what was really, I used CDs.
Right.
I stole my dad's CDs. I still have a bunch of my dad's CDs, and he's like, I think you have my copy of that. It's like, yeah, I do. And Jay, you probably have that too, where like you sort of inherit some of your favorite parts of your parents' record or CD collection.
Yep.
Yeah. Sort of take it with you. That was, I think the repeat button on a CD player was, and I was that kid that similar to what Jay was saying about getting lost for hours, is I could hit repeat until I'd hear from downstairs, like, you've heard that one enough. Like, for example, like I was in middle school, and I was like a attitudinal 13-year-old, and I discovered Led Zeppelin. And I got this box set and the first track on this particular 3-album remasters that I had was Good Times, Bad Times. And John Bonham goes, boom, go gaga, go 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 gaga, and then he does this triplet thing from the bass drum. And I was like, And I just put it on repeat and
Until you
kept,
get it.
and I still can't play it, but but that was, and to your point earlier about technology, I think that one of the things that worked in my favor, and Jay, probably yourself too, is that because you had fewer single things at your disposal, you had more time and you didn't have any other option than to get more out of what was right in front of you. I don't mean that like we had to walk, up a hill both ways in the snow.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you
right.
have everything.
Yeah.
But then you had a thing and you just really like learned it really, really well.
Right.
And I think you can get, I think both paths will get you to the same place.
Yeah.
Right.
But having too much, I think maybe it's like the focus is for somebody like me, that would be very difficult when there's so much. I think I would, if I were a kid like learning now.
Right. Well, it's interesting.
I'd have trouble like focusing on one thing.
Totally.
In the world we live in with Twitter, where it needs to be like 140 characters or less, I agree with you. It's interesting because I'm working with a few people right now that wanted to get into jazz and are not young students. They're older, great musicians. But the first approach that they had was to go and get a book, and they started reading this book, and then they thought, I should go explore this thing that's in this book over on this website. And then they went from that website page to 3 other pages on the same exact thing when all they really needed was just a tiny bit of that. And I think that is what is scary about the internet for young kids, because if I'm a young kid who's interested in jazz and I go to check out something other than a blues scale, very quickly I could go down a rabbit hole of, I have no idea where I'm going. I don't know what I'm going to jump to next. And I don't know how any of this applies to me.
I was on the early, and I don't want to name names, but there were some of my classmates at Capitol that early on got caught up in that YouTube. Like I'm never going to be as good as this or that 13-year-old that can play. That sort of like what do you call it? Insecurity that would come from seeing all these crazy viral videos of a kid playing giant steps at 7 years old or whatever. I think to me that isn't the point of what we're trying to do. And the other thing I'll say on that too is that I'm noticing that students are having a harder time turning on a play along and just playing with it, sitting down and playing with it. I don't know if that's because it's too many things going on or what, but one of the things, and Jay, I suspect you played along with music coming up too, is I would put these, especially drum play alongs are really popular subcategory of music education books and things. There are these drumless play alongs and all these different incredible books have come out that you'll learn your Latin styles out of a book with drumless play-alongs, and you'll learn a bunch of jazz things. And my old teacher in Indiana, Steve Houghton, was somebody that sort of pioneered the drumless play-alongs. And I had his books when I was 16, and I would put those on repeat and get my trading down on the trading play along. And then I'd play the Latin, the samba, the fast samba. Like, I can't do that. And you get lost in the music. You don't really overly critique, you just play, you get with it. And I'm seeing fewer and fewer students sort of diving into recordings with themselves playing along and using that as a way to develop.
Right. I think what's interesting on that standpoint is that I myself have fallen into the category of, with the iReel app, right? How cool is that? You get to pause something. You can work on just 2 bars at a time, right? But you work at 2 bars at a time, you lose the entire feel of what the tune is supposed to bring you. And so if you're working on, playing something with a play along track that you're only working over and over and over again, these 2 bars, you lose the sense of creativity that I think jazz brings. And I think that is what is dangerous about technology. I mean, I think there are so many good things about technology, and we could sit here and do the cliche thing over and over again, talking about all of the awesome opportunities. But I think it is important for people to realize, just the darker side of having too many options. So anyways, that to me is a very interesting entire subtopic that we could get into, and perhaps another show.
I have to ask though, Jay, did you use like Abersalds or any kind of play along recordings when you were coming up?
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, once I got to North Texas, especially, it was like, what Abersalds do you have? What Abersalds do you have? So we would all just switch and record.
Abersald parties, man, that's awesome.
It's true. We go to each other's houses. Oh, you got Bebop and Beyond. I'm there. What
That's
time?
awesome. I love that
I'm there.
so much.
I'll bring popcorn. Yeah,
Something.
so we used
Man.
to trade them and record them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
At least I did with the people that I was hanging out with. So,
Yeah.
but
That's
yeah,
awesome.
we used to do that a lot, and do Aebersol parties at people's houses. And, yeah,
That's so cool.
nerd out with the Abes.
You learn some tunes.
Even cooler than that, before the iReel, if you had a tune that you needed to learn or wanted to learn, and you had no play along, you had to comp for yourself.
Yeah.
So how good was that experience for me
Right.
as a kid? Like trying to just figure it out, fight through this chord progression, be able to play it, have the metronome on over here so I could hear it with my little, whatever that was, Mr. Walkman. The Walkman, my metronome's going over here, and I'm comping for myself. So that's before we had a lot of Aebersol recordings, and definitely before iReel. So way back when.
Wow.
I'm glad you said that, Jay, because that was a huge turning point for me in my jazz education. When I took that class with you and you made us comp and you made us do jazz piano techniques.
It gave you the opportunity.
Well, it yes, thank you.
It's important.
It is important.
So
But
important.
what it does is it visualizes the learning, right? I'm not looking at a chord symbol anymore. I'm visualizing what makes up that chord symbol in front of me. So, anywho,
You can watch
the
those
other
little sevens do their little dance.
That's right.
It's the
Voice
best.
leading.
man, I want to go back. I want to go back now. All right. Anyways, the other part of this show is talking about jazz ensembles. And specifically, I'm excited because I have two people here who are in charge of jazz ensembles, or have had experience being in charge of jazz ensembles, and that makes me incredibly excited to ask you guys some things. But Zach, first off, this is a huge thing, right? Like last week, this is brand new news that you are going to be leading the big band there at Capitol, right?
Yeah, that's right. I will be filling in for the enormous shoes of Lou Fisher and Von Weister and Ray Eubanks, and leading the Capitol Big Band next school year.
That is quite a lineage.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, man.
I'm just well, and guess what? My dad was in that band.
Royalty. Oh, no way.
He was in the band. He was in the band with Vaughn in the early.
Oh my God!
I was in the band.
That's awesome.
On saxophone and drums under Lou.
Oh my gosh!
So it's kind of cool. Yeah, I'm pinching myself to get to do that. Of course, Rob Parton led the band for a minute when he was here, and Lou was on sabbatical. So there's I'm very, very grateful to have the chance to go and do that.
Right.
They're lucky to have you.
I can't agree more. Yeah, they really are. And to have you as the experienced person who's going to be doing it, I think is important. Mainly, I got to say that your own big band, the Zach Compston Big Band, is incredible. And seeing you guys live is such a fun experience. And the reason why I'm most excited that you're going to be taking over the Capitol Big Band is I think there's some new things that you can bring to the table. I think that you approach jazz in a way that you're going to want to still pick from the classics, but still deliver fresh stuff that students, might jump on more of. And so what I want to ask you about, Zach, is literature in terms of jazz band ensembles and whatnot. And maybe this is unfair because you've known maybe for a little bit more than a week that you're going to be doing this, but you go to program college level rep and you've got to think, what am I going to pull from? Where does your mind jump to first? What's your go-to first, without giving away too many secrets to people? I totally get it.
Well, I have no idea. I obviously have played a lot of that music,
right?
But more so than I've played it, Vaughn is an institution, right. Lou is an institution, right. Ray, Jay, you have a really immense library, particularly of.
I've been institutionalized, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Mark Donovan has a wonderful library. Part of that is some of what he inherited from Todd Stoll's Jazz to Go days. What I had planned to do is sit down with a number of my friends and colleagues and mentors and say, give me half a dozen charts that you might program for a college level big. What's important to you,
right?
And I think everybody's going to give their own answer. And I think for me, to your point about my big band, which I was really fortunate to have a band that everybody that I called wanted to do it, and that made that experience so fun.
Yeah.
I do think that it's going to be important to play some literature that resonates with the students.
Right.
But at the same time, it's a 1-credit ensemble. I mean, it's a big part of your time there. Right. You're there to be developed as a musician through the lens of this medium. So that means Basie and Ellington and Thad Jones, Mel Lewis. That means, so, I think for me, I've been sort of imagining I've got to see where the students are at, but I also think that I've got a dear friend, Keith Carnes, that I went to graduate school with, and I go to Alaska with him every summer, except for this one, of course. He leads a big band at Western Oregon, and he's just obsessed with that literature, and he and I have talked for hours about stuff. So I think for me right now, between now and the fall, I'm just going to talk to all the people that I admire in this arena, because I have confidence in my teaching.
Right.
I just want to come up with the right book, you know what I mean? And I think as long as I pick the right tunes, I think that'll make the teaching really happen.
I'm absolutely with you. And so what I love about us all being together, the three of us, is that I'm the student that had Jay as my mentor, and then got to know you as a great friend. And I'm excited to see you do these things at the college level. I'm really excited for those kids. But Jay, I can attest to what Zach was saying, and that when I was in your ensemble, my favorite part about being in your ensemble is the variety of literature that you picked. I think you do a great job of picking, classic repertoire, but also throwing something that I may have never heard of, or other students in that ensemble may have never heard of, or is relatively unknown just to the normal jazz connoisseur. So Jay, when you're picking rep like that, how do you approach that? I'm curious. When you're at a college level ensemble, what's the go-to? You're looking at me like, why did you ask me this?
Gosh, I just have to say, I agree with everything that Zach said wholeheartedly. It's like you have that core. You want to swing, you just have to do Basie,
Right.
You want to like really get the band swinging. The figures are written perfectly, everything works. So, I mean, you have to think about it as being, from a pedagogical angle, you got to do Basie, you got to do those core folks, Ellington, and I don't know, when I have a band that can do it, I love doing Bob Brookmeyer's music. I don't know, I never got to do any of that at Otterbein.
Yeah.
We did a little Maria Schneider.
Yep.
I don't know if you were in the band.
Yeah, I was. Yep.
We did Dance You Monster. I think we
That was
tried
incredible.
to do Greenpeace. We tried to do, I forget, we did some Mingus in there. So
Yeah.
there's too much of any one thing, I think, is not healthy, because their band's going to just burn out on it. Unless that's what it's about, I mean, you can set it up your way. And if you just wanted to do a Basie year,
Well,
to me, that would be awesome.
right.
But to a younger band, they might be like, "What else? What else is there? Can we play some Radiohead? That you got all those charts available to you." So those are great too.
Mm-hmm.
There's some excellent stuff out there that's more contemporary.
I think it's interesting too, because what you guys both are talking about is you need to know your ensemble before you program. Obviously, just like any type of music director, you need to know your ensemble. But what I think I can say, at least from my experience and what I hear you talking about, Zach, is that you're not going to treat your ensembles as a traditional, we're only playing swing big band music. We're going to explore these different subgenres of jazz. And I think when you're talking about a collegiate level ensemble like that, it's so important, because you're right. You need to let those students experience all those different ideas and hear them and play them so that they have that experience in their repertoire. I think that's awesome. From a middle school band director, and the reason why I love this show the most is because the number one reason why I want to do the show is because I want to learn. I'm not doing it to get other people to hear my voice or anything like that. It's because I want to learn. And so from a middle school band director, and I'd love to hear from both of you on this, if you were sitting there telling a middle school band teacher who maybe hasn't had experience with jazz, what do you need to do with your kids in terms of repertoire? Not necessarily like tunes, but what type of feels do the kids need to know? Do they need to know swing first? Do they need to know funk? Do they need to know Latin? Or is that just all not important and we just need to get kids to play? I mean, I'm curious on what your thoughts are, because this is something that I've struggled with as a middle school band teacher. Obviously I love jazz and I have a decent knowledge in jazz, but I don't want to go overboard. Let me say this. What do you think is the most important thing that I need to tell a middle school kid in jazz, or teach a middle school kid in jazz band? Maybe I'll go to Zach first, because Zach, this is your wheelhouse in jazz arts.
I'm fortunate that in my time at JAG, I go around to so many middle schools and
Right.
face this exact scenario. So, and there's no right answer. I see schools that are only playing the Dean Sorensen First Place for Jazz or whatever it is. I can't remember what it's called, but and playing. So in effect, they're playing jazz-like music.
I love that. I
in-
want to
in
steal
the-
that. Yeah.
and written for jazz pedagogy.
Right. Right.
So they're learning some scales, they're learning about vamps, and they're playing jazzy songs.
I love it. I love the
Other
way you're saying
schools, other schools are doing like your pep band music. They're doing, "Isn't She Lovely" and "Oye Como Va" and uh, those kinds of pep band
Right.
type songs.
Right.
And then what I found is the schools that I love working with the most are the ones that do whatever combination of music they need to keep the kids engaged, but then they commit a portion of it to playing a jazz piece. And so what we do at JAG is we use the sheer music company Real Easy Book with the harmonized part 2 and part 3 for every
I know what
tune.
you're talking about. Yeah.
And so we'll teach those songs, and we'll have different people play different parts, or we'll teach a blues and we'll teach them about form, and then we'll teach them backgrounds by ear, and then we'll have them sort of democratically write their arrangement. Now that we have 2 backgrounds, a head, and solos, who's going to do what?
Man.
So I think a combination of those things is cool. I think the biggest question is how does the middle school jazz band fit as a piece of scaffolding toward high school?
Yeah.
And I think that to the extent that you can, because unfortunately I see some schools where the middle school band is strong, and then it leads to a high school band that doesn't have a jazz band or has a uncommitted, non-committal, not whatever, lack of commitment type director,
Right.
And so I think that when I'm thinking of middle school, I'm thinking keep the kids engaged, make sure that the jazz process is being forged there.
Yeah.
It can be cheesy at times. You can play Cold Duck Time and have a lot of fun with that, or you can play Cantaloupe Island and get the jazz process across.
Right.
Play a blues,
Right.
and then play it. I just heard my friend Mercedes Chomos at Ridgeview Middle School, which is over by Riverside Hospital.
Yeah.
He was doing Blues Walk, this kind of Paul Murtha arrangement of Blues Walk.
I know that. Yeah, I know that one. Yep.
Fine, it's great. String of Pearls, and I think as long as you have the jazz process at the heart of your teaching, then you can get a lot done with a combination of all of that literature. But if you're playing top corner to bottom corner and you're putting it away, playing a concert for the tree lighting ceremony at school,
Right.
like that's not, to me, I would think that that's not quite encapsulating the jazz process.
Yeah. I
Sorry to go long on that.
No. I
Right
absolutely feel what you're saying, and that makes me feel a little bit better about the way that I've handled my middle school jazz band. My big thing that I've been harping on is middle school is the perfect time to talk about improvisation. If you get kids who are in 7th grade, they are still not afraid to play on their instrument. You get a kid who's a freshman or a sophomore in high school and you say, make something up. They don't want to do that because they're surrounded by great musicians who have worked hard, seniors, juniors who work hard on their instrument and can play the notes. And so for me, the big thing for middle school jazz band has been, let's teach you how to improvise very basic forms, very basic blues scales that you can use later on in high school when you're playing jazz stuff like that. And I think improvisation is something that is obviously difficult for kids to understand sometimes, but also so much fun. And Jay, I'm going to go to you for a second because I remember, and this is something big for me, probably something not so big for you, but for me, we were having a lesson and I was playing something to, it was either Camptown Races or Twinkle Twinkle or something. And you're like, hey, mess around with that. I'm like, oh, this is stupid. This is Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Like, why am I going to do that? And then I ended up playing something and I was like, holy God, like that was awesome. It was fun. It was easy. But you had talked about, improvisation can be as easy as that, as easy as playing folk songs and things like that. So Jay, I'm interested in, what is the basis of improvisation? What's the very basic entry-level improvisation that you think middle school kids could probably attain, or techniques that you think kids could go towards?
I think what you're talking about, I do that with a lot of people because everybody knows that song. You just find a song that is, that whatever song it is that we're using the word resonate a lot. But yeah, that resonates with the kid. It's a Twinkle Twinkle. It's Mary Had a Little Lamb. It's I don't know, the national anthem. It's whatever it is. Happy Birthday.
Yeah.
But if the kid knows the song, have them have them try it in another key after they've done it well once, and then have them try it in another key. So they're like, all they're doing is using their ears. Maybe you can make a link to theory.
Yeah.
You're in the key of D. What note did you start on? What is that number? So if the kid is old enough to handle that kind of load. But yeah, you start, the good teaching starts from successes, right? You build on successes. So if you've got something that a student can play well and knows well, I try to do that always with the summer camp that I've been doing in Michigan for a while, the No Charts camp. So we just the whole week we do everything by ear, and these
oh, that's awesome.
The kids are getting younger and younger too. It used to be like they would,
Yeah. No,
they're young kids and they'll do it. Like you
that's
said,
great.
Right.
When the older they are, the less they want to do it. It seems like.
I was at the school that I told you Mercedes teaches at, and
Yeah.
she was doing, and I've started sometimes with middle schools going like, you just play a tune that you've already got prepared for me when I first come in. I want to hear you play. And so they did Let's Go Band.
Yeah.
And they played it real straight. Yeah, I guess. And that arrangement was called Let's Go Band. It could be Let's Go, whatever your mascot is for your high school, sports team. But I had Derek DeCenzo in there with me because I always bring someone else in with me, usually a bass player because it can help with the sound. Mm-hmm. And so they played it, and I turned it into a trad tune. And I had 3 horn players come up and said, just play on these 5 notes or whatever the key's in.
Yeah.
And I had Derek go into like a 2-beat feel, and I was like, and it was like the kids were like, right. It was a stylistic tweak, and it was expression, and then a couple kids just soloed over the top of the melody happening. We didn't carve out a solo and say, now you're on, ready, go.
Right.
It was like just solo over the top of your bandmates playing, and there was just sort of this realization of like, oh, okay, that's
absolutely
steps toward what this music is.
Yeah,
awesome.
It's a friendly environment. It's very safe. They know the song. Yeah. That's what in the summer. That's what I do too. I play a recording, so they get to hear like what are kind of our goal, what we're trying to do. We just play on 1-chord vamps. They learn. My goal is always a blues in F, a blues in B flat, and a minor modal tune so they can do Dorian. So it's a Dorian vamp. So they learn, these are like 5th grade, 6th grade kids, and they're picking up on it and they're using it. So, and nobody feels uncomfortable soloing because it becomes a very safe environment. And if it ever gets weird, Corey, like nobody wants to solo, have everybody solo at the same time.
Right.
Then nobody can really hear anything else that's going
Group
on.
improvisation.
It's just total noise, so they can at least try it. They're at least trying it. You know?
Yep.
I could talk to you guys literally for days about this, and what that's telling me is that I really kind of want to do another episode about jazz education. I think we'll have to maybe plan on doing that down the road because there's a lot that we didn't get to, but I don't want to go on forever. So. Zach, in this show, we always end the show with the second to last segment is always the tune of the week. Tune that maybe you're listening to that you don't think other people are, or one that you think is really hip to you right now that you think our audience should listen to. What are you thinking? What have you been listening to?
Oh man, well, a couple things. 2, I'll name 2 if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
One is I decided, we created all these virtual resources for our youth jazz kids. And one of the goals was for them to be able to play a tune, play a solo on a tune, record yourself and send it in. So I thought, I'm going to get my saxophone back out for the first time. And I'm going to do the same thing. I might as well take this chance to do something. So I started transcribing a Sonny Stitt solo from Lester Leaps In, the tune. I think the album is called Now. It's a yellow cover.
Okay.
I think it's on Impulse Records. He does this incredible stop time solo. That's just, the time is so good. It's just like, it's so good. And and so that I transcribed that on tenor. I don't play tenor, so it was like a whole new world for me. But so the Lester Leaps In thing, for anybody wanting to check out Stop Time and the art of melodic blues infused, just incredible playing that's not overly complicated, because even I can transcribe it. The other thing on the and this was a drum set thing, is this morning I got back out one of my favorite Coltrane records, Coltrane Sound. And
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 1961 recording, I think. So kind of in between Coltrane, before he had sort of gone toward his sort of later period, while
Right.
you know, sort of like Love Supreme and Beyond is right before all that. And this tune, The Night Has a Thousand Eyes, is like one of those tunes that they switch between Latin and swing.
Yeah.
You know, Latin thing for 8 bars, and then swing for a few bars, and then the bridge is all swung. And one of the beautiful things is, as you listen to that, it swings the whole time. It doesn't ever deviate from swing.
Yeah.
And so one of the things you learn, like, you know, you don't realize it when you're like, when you're a young student, you're like, oh, I notice a straight 8th note feel followed by a swing feel. And the truth is, no, it's swinging the whole time, you know, because Elvin Jones has this like tumble dryer sound, you know. And so it is. It's like clothes in a tumble dryer.
That's awesome.
And so I went back, and, you know, there are those recordings, and this is the magic of what we were saying about playing along with records, is that record, Coltrane Sound, is one of those that I could drink my coffee, go down and play for 40 minutes and just put on that record to do it, you know.
Yeah.
And that's a whole practice session. So Coltrane Sound is the album, and then that Sonny Stitt tune, Lester Leaps In.
Man, I'm going to check them out. I'll also put it in our comments so that everybody can check that out in the next video that we drop. Jay, I see you have a saxophone.
Found one. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could. No. Jay, what about you? Do you have a tune that you want to recommend or perhaps play for everybody?
Oh, the subject made me nostalgic. So we were talking about like learning and all that, and being in school and all that.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, when I was like in ninth grade, more like, I started getting into Charlie Parker.
Yeah.
And there was an album that I checked out from the East Detroit Public Library, and it was I think it was probably a Folkways record, but it was just called Bebop, and it was just like a collection. And the songs on there, just unbelievable. Of course, there's a ton of Charlie Parker on there and stuff, but this is a Charlie Parker tune. Actually, it's not a Charlie Parker tune. The guy Benny. I'll think of it.
That's
Benny
right.
Harris, not Barry Harris, but Benny Harris, the same guy who wrote Ornithology, the guy who really wrote Ornithology.
Okay.
Anyway, it's another rhythm changes tune, because you can't have enough rhythm changes tunes. But there's a tiny little variation in it, and if I play it right, you'll hear it.
Yeah. Yes.
Plays that one.
Man.
Plays that one. It's a good one to learn.
Man.
It's rhythm changes with it's only two bars different, so it goes to G flat for just a second.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
It's great.
That was awesome, man.
Crazyology.
Crazyology.
I'm going to put that down too. I'll put that on our list as well. Well, guys, I can't thank you enough. All the craziness that goes on with live streaming, I'm going to have to keep racking my brain against
You're
it.
doing great, Corey. Keep it up, man. You're doing just fine.
But, as we near the end, Zach, first, I want to thank you for taking time because you're always on the internet, and now it seems. And it's awesome. It's awesome to pick your brain, and thank you for doing the work that you do. Please keep doing it. And
on the internet so much.
I'm like a Kardashian.
Oh man,
I have a less notorious backside. I can tell you that.
Not to me, man.
No. Well, Zach, what do we have to look forward to? We're under a minute-ish time, but what's coming up?
Just keep following us on Jazz Arts Group and Jazz Academy on Facebook. We're trying to come up with summer programming. We don't know what it's going to look like yet, but we're going to keep trying to be there for our audience, for our students, and you can find us on social media.
Well, we really appreciate that. That's fantastic. And thanks to everybody who listens to this. I appreciate it. Your encouragement helps me continue to compile a list of questions and whatnot. I'm literally racing against the clock. Thank you, Jay, so much for your help. I really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Jay.
I'm so excited. Folks, next week we're excited. We have a good friend of mine, Andrew Kovaleski, is joining us to talk about the topic of classical musicians and what they can take away from jazz and what jazz musicians can take away from classical. I'm really excited about that one. So it should be exactly. I was waiting for that. That's
up, baby.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. So, folks, we appreciate it. We're looking forward to the next week. We will talk to you. Oh, there it is. All right. I'm going to close this out before Jay loses his mind on. Was that a bear? Was that a bear? That was a bear, wasn't it?
That was the Creston.
That was the Creston. Oh,
So
see,
now-
this is.
I'm going to get out my Fairling book.
Now we're all just playing air saxophone. This is fantastic. All right, bye everybody. Have a great night.
Yeah. See ya.
Bye.